Preparing. All right, you are live.
All right, we'll just give it a minute here for folks to come on in.
You are live.
All right, we'll just give it a... Okay, I'm starting to see our first couple of attendees coming in. Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming in from. We're just gonna give everybody just a couple of minutes here to get in and get settled, but I'd love, I'm gonna go ahead and put a prompt in the chat. Love to hear where folks are tuning in from today. I'm coming to you from Superior, Wisconsin. Nadia, if you wanna go ahead and let us know where you're coming in from in the chat, and everybody else, please go ahead and share where you're coming in from, and then we'll get started in just a minute here. All right, we got some folks from PA coming in today. Right on. Good deal. Like I said, good morning, and my name is Mickey Fitch Collins. I'm our host for Offsite. We'll just get started in a couple of minutes here. So just go ahead and refill those coffee cups, get comfortable, and then we'll get rolling.
And if I can add, grab a pen and paper or set up a digital way of taking notes in case anything sparks up for you and you want to get it down so you don't forget.
I should have a little bit of music that I play in the background here, but I'm thankfully for all of you, I'm not going to sing. So there you go. Nadia, you're the performer, right? So
oh no, I don't sing in public anyway. I'll sing in the shower, but yeah, exactly. I'm not a triple threat. I am comfortable stating that.
Got it.
No pride about that.
Awesome. Like I said, we'll just give, I'm showing us 1 minute to the start time. We'll just give another minute or so here to bring some other folks in, and then we'll get started. All right, welcome to our other attendees that just joined us. If you want to go ahead and open that chat button on there and let us know where you're tuning in from this morning, that would be super great. Always nice to see where our audience is coming from. And I think we'll actually go ahead and get started here because I'm seeing the clock turn to the half hour. So want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning and coming in live with us. I'm very excited to have this session on deck for us. I'm very excited personally about this content. I'm excited for you to join the Learnit community here for this community event called Sleep and the Importance of Self-Care. My name is Mickey Fitch Collins, and I'm joined by our instructor and my teammate, Nadia Diamond, who's going to be leading us through today's session on sleep and the importance of self-care. To those of you that are new to these events and or unfamiliar with Learnit, it's great to see you. I recognize some of the names, some of you that have been coming back over and over again for all of our great content. So welcome back. Good to see you again too. A little bit about Learnit. We are a learning and development organization that's based out of San Francisco, California, but we are located nationwide, right? We are a distributed workforce all across the country. I'm in Wisconsin, Nadia's in New York. We're all over the place, right? We are committed to helping individuals learn the skills that are needed to thrive and upskill in the workplace. We also work with a lot of private organizations to improve things like company culture and build scalable training programs. To those of you who have been coming back with us, spending time in our offsite community week after week, there's 7,300 people worldwide that are part of that offsite community. So thank you for being here. How these sessions work, we host these sessions roughly every other Friday event at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time for an hour. Again, we're on a mission to make professional development, learning, and resources more accessible to everybody, which is why we have these type of events available for free. These events are a way for us to connect and learn in community, and also for you to get a flavor for our content. The session that Nadia is giving today is a part of a larger session that you'll hear about at a later point. So it gives you an opportunity to learn about some of those bigger workshop topics and get a flavor for what the Learnit style is like. They're always led by one of our either our internal instructors who are subject matter experts, or some of our friends of Learnit who come in as other subject matter experts too. A couple of housekeeping items before I pass the mic over to Nadia. We would love for you to interact in the chat. This is a chat-only webinar, and so Nadia is probably going to be asking you questions and giving you some probing things. We want you to have those fingers ready to either type things in on your smartphone or on your laptop, whatever that looks like, so that you can interact in that chat. We also welcome you to put any sort of questions in there at any point. At the end of the session, I will put a link to our evaluation for this session. It's super important that we get your comments back, not just on the content, but also Nadia's facilitation skills. I know you're going to love it. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of information on Nadia here. So Nadia is a San Francisco native. She's currently located in Brooklyn, New York. I just learned she's just been there for about 4 years. She considers herself to be a lifelong learner, lots of experience in the both public and the private sector. And besides being one of my teammates and one of our Learnit instructors, she's also an academic coach and an actor too. So lots of awesome skills that Nadia is bringing to us. Today, she's going to be giving us some insights around sleep and the importance of self-care. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my slides. Nadia, if you want to go ahead and start sharing yours. And again, I will be monitoring things over in the chat here. So if you have any questions that come up, I know Nadia is going to be looking at it a little bit as well, but Nadia, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mickey. And thanks everybody for being here. We've got a really strong group. So I look forward to hearing from all 27 of you in the chat at various points in the next hour. I wanted to say, starting off, that this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I will let you know a little bit more about that in just a second, but I wanted to drop in the chat 2 questions for you, and you have the choice of answering one, either, or both. The first question is, what are you looking forward to learning today, or what are you looking to unlearn today? And so while you think about that and put your answers in the chat, I wanted to share a little story about why I personally am such a big fan of talking about this publicly, talking about this with your coworkers. I think that a lot of people don't pay enough attention to sleep. And on a personal note, when I was an undergraduate at Princeton, I was busy running around. It was a very high achieving culture. Everyone was nerding out about our classes. We were having fun with our extracurriculars. It was kind of a go, go, go kind of culture where every day, including weekends, you had at least 3 things on the docket. And I realized that I was kind of burning out. And sophomore year, I decided to try prioritizing sleep over going to all the social events, over going to those extra lectures from visiting guests. And so for a couple days in a row, I put myself to bed on the earlier side so that I would get a solid 8 hours. And a big turning point for me that I still remember clearly, this was over 10 years ago, a big turning point for me was that I woke up one morning and I didn't feel that different. I was just going around doing my thing. And I was walking to class and I passed someone in the green in the courtyard that I had been in a class with the year before, right? We weren't friends. I didn't know them that well. And before I even realized it, I was smiling big and saying, "Hey, how's it going?" And I just did a double take at myself. Like, I just said hi to almost a random stranger without even realizing it. I was feeling so lively and bubbly and positive, and I wasn't beating myself up about things, about not getting all my work done, about not getting to fit exercise into my day. I was taking it easier on myself, still working hard. I was thinking more clearly in my classes. It wasn't as hard for me to focus on the work and the intense scholarly reading I was having to do. And I was just a more open person to everyone I interacted with, whether I knew them well or not. And that day, that moment of smiling big and waving to someone I didn't even know that well, I had to laugh at myself afterwards because they might have thought I was a little goofy. But that moment I will never forget, because that was this pivotal switch in my mind of, wow, I'm physically feeling the effects of what it feels like to get a good night's sleep regularly. And so ever since then, my friends would call me grandma throughout college because I'd be urging everyone to go to bed early. Don't go to the parties, don't drink alcohol, you won't sleep well on it, And so ever since then, I've really made that a priority for myself and really been talking big about it to everyone I speak with. So I'm excited to dive in with you all and talk a little more about it with you, as well as some research-backed pieces of this equation. So I'd love for you to think about, has anyone ever told you can sleep when you're dead? I've certainly heard it. Life's too short. You gotta, just push hard. It's not worth it. You only live once, YOLO, right? That's sort of another phrase that's been tossed around. Yes, absolutely. I see all those yeses in the chat. So that isn't necessarily a great way to go about thinking about it. And you might know from your own personal experience that you might not feel great on a regular basis if you're not getting a lot of sleep. And so for right now, I want to look at these two kind of case study examples. And I would love for you all to read both of these profiles of people and think about who's doing it better. Maybe both of these people have some good rhythms going. But when we want to break down, what does it mean to get a good night's sleep? What does it mean to have a good pattern, right? And system of behaviors that you can do to get a good night's sleep. What are those qualities? And so I'd like for you to read these two comparisons, Joe and Jesse, and then put in the chat, who do you think is doing it better and why? What can you pinpoint? What behavior can you pinpoint to, oh, I think this person's really got it down because blank. So I'll give you all a moment to think about that. Thanks, Jesse. I see Jesse has a good schedule. This Jesse does not. Yes. Jesse has it down because of the pattern. Gus identifies with Joe. I've been there too. Yeah. And if you could think about which person's practice would you ideally have, right? And why? So Joe, evening exercise and sleep go hand in hand. I think Jesse's better because she makes sure to eat. Great, that's a good reason that you're pointing out. A lot of people have been writing in Jesse has a consistent schedule. Jesse gets to eat dinner at a decent time. Great, I love these. You're pinpointing Joe because of the exercise. Excellent, we have a point in Joe's camp too, that he puts in time to get some vigorous exercise, and Jesse goes on a morning walk. So maybe that's a little different. So great, thanks Susan for sharing your experiences as well. Yeah, so we're gonna dive into the different elements of each of these people's situations, and then we can revisit maybe which person's experience might be more effective for their overall health. And so in the next 40, 45 minutes, we will go through the light and dark sleep cycle. We'll be incorporating very recent research studies with scientific backing about which practices are actually healthiest for you to consider incorporating. And then in the second half of the class, we're going to zoom outwards and have more of a bird's eye view on the greater topic of self-care, what exactly that means, what that feels like. And perhaps the most important part of this hour is thinking about how to implement these things. We can sit and talk all day about how nice it is to get 8 hours of sleep every night, how nice it is to eat well, how nice it is to exercise every day or every other day. But until we actually make the time for it in our schedules and are able to stick with it, and that requires realism about what we can physically do and what we cannot do, given all of the other demands on our time, until we get very specific about realistic solutions and implementing action steps that are attainable and can be built upon, we're not really going to move forward. So we'll really make sure to get specific about what we can do. All right, so a lot of you have probably, and you've written in the chat already, you know, what you feel like when you don't sleep as well, what you feel like when you do, other things that come into play when you don't sleep well. I know for me, I'm less interested in exercising if I feel tired and kind of sluggish. I am more likely to reach for high sugar foods because I need that quick energy, because I don't have my body's buildup of energy from having a good night's sleep. And so you can see on this list too, there's a lot else that is impacted severely when we don't get a good night's sleep. We're more likely to get sick. We have trouble learning and remembering things as well. And so we've thought about, okay, what are all the things that are affected when we don't get a good night's sleep? And we've looked at the pieces of Joe's and Jesse's routines of, oh, this seems like this is working out well for them, or this is something where this person isn't, you know, choosing a practice that might be as helpful. But let's actually look at different elements that affect our sleep and think about what might be the hierarchy. And so I'd love for you to consider this and put in the chat, which of these protocols do you think is the most important? They're randomized here, so I'm not giving any hints. Which of these factors is the most important according to what scientists have researched over the years? What do you think? Any guesses? Is it hours of sleep every night? Is that the most important piece? Is it having a cool bedroom so that your body settles into sleep mode more easily? Yeah, timing of food. Great. We have a variety of thoughts here. And it's true that all of these play a role in sleep. The question is, which ones do you think end up being a priority? And if you have at least that one piece, then other things might be able to fall into place more easily. Great. We have, thanks everyone for your chats. It's great to read them. Hours of sleep. I'm seeing a lot of hours of sleep. Sapana says all of it. Yes, I mean, it's true. All are important. But if you had to pinpoint one to focus on, all right, because again, we're not going to instantly get better at sleeping by tackling everything at once. If we weren't working jobs or being good friends or family members, maybe we could spend all 24 hours of our day either sleeping or planning about how we're going to sleep. But I'm guessing none of you have a full 24 hours every day to organize all of that and figure that out and make it a perfect sleep setting. So we're going to focus on one thing that could help. Turns out light exposure across different studies has shown up as being the most significant factor in whether or not we get a good night's sleep. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. Of course, the time you go to bed and wake up, that the fact that that's regular, that matters too. The number of hours you get, sleeping in a cooler environment, and then of course, timing of food and exercise throughout your day so that you're not eating a lot of food or exercising a lot just 30 minutes before bed. Those also play a role. And so before I dive into what specifically is so important about the light exposure piece, I want to share a couple definitions. Cortisol is a hormone. It has a lot of different functions. That is what shoots through our veins when we're in the fight or flight scenario. It is involved with our metabolism, our memory function, our blood pressure. And the way that it specifically affects us in sleep is that in our sleep cycle in the morning, when we wake up, we actually have a small surge of cortisol to help transition us out of the sleep state into the wake state. Melatonin, you might have seen in pill form in the grocery, aisles, because it is a supplement you could take. This is a sleep hormone that our body naturally produces as well. It's produced in the brain in response to darkness. And so as the sun begins to set, that is when our brain begins producing melatonin. And that is sort of encourages us to settle down and get ready to fall asleep. And so part of the sleep cycle is the release every day of cortisol in the morning, melatonin in the evening. And you may have heard about a circadian rhythm, that if you've ever traveled internationally across time zones, you might be unable to fall asleep until 3 a.m. if you go to Europe from the United States, but then you won't be waking up until 12 p.m. That might be because your circadian rhythm is still thinking that you're back in US time. And that is very much affected by sunlight. Darkness as well, but sunlight is really big. And so light exposure, in terms of being the most important factor in how we sleep, how well we sleep, that is based on when light is entering our eyes. And so again, it comes into play at 2 points in the day, sunrise and sunset, essentially. Again, this is sort of what I just explained, but this is a great graphic to sort of explain the cycle of our body's natural rhythms every 24 hours, essentially. So when we wake up, if our eyes see light, natural light, it helps boost our cortisol release, which then gives us the energy to get out of bed and helps our body realize, okay, we're done with our rest phase. It's time to get up and get moving. Okay, then the timer, our internal body clock, is set so that, 10 or 12 hours later, then in combination with the sky getting dark outside, cortisol, the amount of cortisol being released is reduced and the amount of melatonin goes up because our body is beginning to settle for sleep. Great question, Gary. You may have seen in different movies and TV shows. I'm thinking of the movie that came out many years ago called The Proposal, where people in Norway, Northern Europe, in Alaska, they will have a very complicated set of curtains and things, areas that block light and that open light, and even artificial light that can mimic sunlight, so that their body can stay in that more regular circadian rhythm. Yeah, great question. And so something to help your body adjust is to make sure that you are able to get sunlight in your eyes as soon as possible after waking. So you don't have to wake up and go outside and blind yourself looking at the sun. If you have a bedroom window that you don't cover with blackout curtains, that means that as the sky brightens, your body will sense that, and it helps when you wake up to get that shot of cortisol in. And also, very importantly, to avoid bright lights after 8 p.m. because when your eyes are taking in a lot of bright light, a lot of you might have blue light blockers in your glasses. You might have an app on your computer that turns it orange, right? That is all to help your body from thinking that it's still daytime at 10 p.m. Because if you're staring at your computer screen at night or even a TV screen, your eyes are getting a lot of information saying, it's bright, it's really bright, so you have to stay awake right now. When in reality, that's the time when we want to be settling down. And then the last piece is ensuring that you're not being exposed to light, especially between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 p.m. And of course, I want to emphasize here that consistent change that you're able to rely on happens over time. Doing this for one day or even 1 week might not help, might not be all you need to just sort of settle into it and not have to think about it. This might take time to implement and make sure that that things become kind of a second nature or habit. And so, of course, even though light is the biggest factor according to recent scientific studies on the different factors involved in a good night's sleep, these other points are also very important to consider. Are you going for late night runs, or you're going to the gym at 10 p.m. because that's when no one else is there? Are you only sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night? Is your bedtime schedule very erratic? All of these things can also affect your ability to get a good night's sleep. I'd love to pause here and ask Nikki, have there been any other questions in the chat that I might have missed?
No, we're good. We're just talking about living up north and dark winters.
I had a roommate once from Calgary, Canada, and she had an alarm clock that was an orb. And instead of a sound to beep and wake her up, it would be off throughout the night. And then at around 5 a.m., 6 a.m., maybe it would start to have like a really tiny orange glow. And then at 6:30, it would get a little bit brighter orange. And then at 7, it would be brighter. And then at 7:30, when she wanted to get up, that's when it would be at its brightest. And so that was actually following exactly what these scientists were talking about, where even though it wasn't actual sunlight, it was enough of a signal for her body to recognize, oh yeah, it's light on, so it's light out, so it's time for me to get some cortisol in my system and wake up a little bit. Okay, so we've just talked a lot about all these different factors, different elements. I know you've been putting in the chat what might work for you, what you're struggling with right now. And so I'm going to walk you through a couple of things that I would love for you to write down for yourself. You don't need to share them in the chat if you're not comfortable. This is your personal sleep plan. So I would like for you to first focus on the do it now quadrant, the top left. If you have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, you can draw it out if that helps. What step would you like to begin doing right now? What's a priority for you to try out? And I want to emphasize again, trying to introduce a huge shift into your schedule, into your way of life, that oftentimes is not sustainable. What is sustainable in the long term is taking baby steps so that your body has time to adjust and not be stretched or pushed too far, that it then is rattled in a way. So if you have baby steps, you can adjust in these really small ways and then gradually push the bar forward over time. So I would say there probably isn't an action you can put down or put in the chat that is too small. So just make them small and tangible. And if you're comfortable putting in the chat, what is one thing you want to try doing now? What's a priority for you that you want to take an action step? I'll give you about another 30 seconds to consider this. Stop watching TV at bedtime. Try not to eat so close to sleep time. Consistent schedule. Great. See if you can get even smaller. Is it stop watching TV, or more specific, I should say, is it stop watching TV a half an hour before you want to turn your lights out? Is it not watching TV in bed, but watching it in a different room of the house so that then when you come to your bed, your body begins to learn this is not when we're going to be awake? Great. No screen time before sleep. Yeah, so not eat 2 hours before bedtime. I love that, Lori, because you have a quantitative kind of check box to think about, because you know, oh, if I'm going to go to bed at 10, that means I need to have dinner before 8 p.m. And that's something that you can see very clearly, did I follow what I wanted to try doing or not? Did I eat before 8 p.m. or after? Great. I love what everyone's putting in here. It seems like they're very specific to what you are currently struggling with and what your life is revolving around right now. Thinking about YouTube, TV, scrolling phones. That's great. All right. And so what is a secondary goal that you don't need to implement right now, but you want to try implementing further down the line? Again, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew right now. So what's a secondary goal that you'll be thinking about for a future action? Great. So Yusto wrote first, if I can give you some praise, first, the do it now is try to weed off YouTube while trying to sleep. And then that's going to be your focus. That's what you'll try working on for right now. But in the future, you have your eye on a future goal, which is get a consistent sleep schedule. So it's not just getting off YouTube beforehand. It's making sure that you're in bed at the approximately the same time every night so that you can wake up at approximately the same time. Great. Thanks, Gus. Great. Okay, do it when time. So what I mean by this is to get even more specific about the timing of things. It could be the timing of exercise. It could be the timing of dinner. For example, you could say, I am going to eat dinner 1 hour earlier for 3 days next week. So that is not a big promise to yourself that you're going to try and do forever. You're just going to try it out next week for 3 of the days next week. Eat dinner 1 hour earlier. So if you could get tangible for that bottom left-hand quadrant, what are you going to do and when? This will help you stay more accountable because it's very easy to determine, did I eat dinner early for 3 days? If I didn't, I know it. Versus if I say, oh, I'm going to try and exercise earlier in the day. Well, then I'm not going to be holding myself accountable to exercising after breakfast, before lunch, during my lunch break, before I begin making dinner, right? So the more specific you can get, the more you can actually plan how you're going to navigate it so that you don't end up giving up on yourself. And then finally, for a little bit of negative reinforcement, or in other words, thinking about what we want to avoid, what do you want to stop doing? Or what are you not going to do? For me, my struggle is picking up my phone when I wake up because my phone has my alarm on it. So I'll pick it up and start reading the news. I don't want to do that. So what's the thing that you all want to stop doing? I'll give you all about another 15 seconds. And I just have to say, I don't want anyone to feel like, this is the session where you just get to beat yourself up about how you're not sleeping well, because as technology has advanced so rapidly in the past several decades, the nature of our jobs has changed. The way that we do our jobs with the pandemic and a lot more people working remotely, you may have had to install email on your phone or download a bunch of work things onto your personal computer because you can't take your desktop from the office, right? And so it's not that we are, crazy, uncontrollable kids with technology, right? It's that we have a lot of external pressures, and technology, phones, computers, tablets, the designers of these items actually worked and conducted test groups with users on creating notification sounds that were impossible to ignore. They actively tried to make it impossible for us to ignore something happening on our phone. Okay, so that's what we're working against. And so that might mean turning off notifications for certain apps. Maybe it's only a buzz and not a ding. Maybe there are no banners that pop down. Maybe you have one of your devices in do not disturb for half of the workday. You can get creative about how you want to limit, because I do think technology ends up being a big factor in our ability to focus on settling down and either falling asleep or waking up more naturally and doing what we need first in the morning versus what our phone is telling us. Great, thanks everyone. You have really excellent, clear items that you want to start avoiding. So in the next 20 minutes, we're going to zoom outwards, as I said, and talk about self-care. And self-care involves a lot of different things. And sleep, I think, is probably, and this one is just my opinion, so it's okay if you feel differently. I think sleep is one of those factors of our existence that has the most effect on every other aspect. If I don't sleep well, I won't want to exercise. I won't want to eat as healthfully. I won't be able to think as clearly and do my work as well. I may not be as social. I'll be crankier and have more negative thoughts in my head. And so sleep ends up being a really important piece of the equation. In a different course that we offer, Whole Health Matters, we also talk about nutrition and physical activity and emotional well-being, but I do think sleep ends up being really, it has a big effect on other parts. And so self-care, I would love for you to type in the chat, what does self-care mean to you? There's no right answer here. What does self-care mean to you? Give you about 30 seconds to try and come up with your own definition or example of it. Thanks, Clarabelle. Healthy living, eating, exercising. Taking care of yourself mentally. Giving yourself pep talks. Great. Yeah, what else? While you think about it, I wanted to share some other definitions from, oh, great, Rafaela, taking care of yourself by getting massages, knowing your need. Oh, wow, they're flowing in now. Let's see. Making you the #1 priority, doing something that makes you happy, loving yourself, being nicer to yourself, silencing your inner critic, knowing your needs, mental and physical, and taking time to take care of it. Listening to your body. Excellent. I love all of these. So the dictionary definition is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health, or protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. The definition, it's not really a definition, it's more of an example that for me resonated the most because of how much it is about someone's outlook versus actions, is from an author named Brianna Wiest. And she said, true self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It is making the choice to build a life you don't need to regularly escape from. And that was huge for me because I mentioned going to Princeton earlier. So much of it was about external goals, making other people happy, hitting the marks. And so then self-care became, oh, every once in a while, I'll get a massage. Every once in a while, I'll sleep in. Every once in a while, I'll turn my phone off for a whole day. But that's because I was living such an extreme life, and in some cases still am, I'm not perfect, such an extreme demanding life that self-care was the exception to the rule. Versus what if we weren't living so intensely, so extremely that we needed these really drastic breaks? Essentially kind of an argument for moderation. Yes, Jesse, exactly. Can't pour from an empty cup. And of course, I know I've certainly received messages from people, whether it's family members or bosses, that it's selfish to take time to yourself, that you're too sensitive if you need that. And what I've noticed in practice, yes, happily, Lolita, true self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake, although I do love chocolate cake. It is making the choice to build a life you don't need to regularly escape from. Great. And I should quote, it is from the author, Brianna Wiest. I'm pretty sure this is how you spell her last name. I could be wrong though. I was not so brilliant to make that up. And really what I've noticed in practice is that if I was taking 3 days of work off every week because I needed to sleep in, okay, well, that's not helpful for my colleagues, right? I'd be letting a lot of people down. But taking a personal day, you know, when I really feel that I might need it, even if it's not, again, in that drastic situation, but just, you know what, things are actually going smoothly, but I'm going to take a day off so that if things start to ramp up, that I am definitely refreshed and ready to tackle that. It ends up helping everyone else in addition to yourself. So there are several different types of self-care. And this is not, you know, the full list. You could think of other elements as well, but these are pretty pivotal, I would say. There's the psychological aspect of, someone mentioned silencing the inner critic, right? There's the physical aspect. People have mentioned yoga. Environmental, helping prevent stressful situations. So that might be, you know, doing organization and time management to make sure that you don't end up getting buried deep in a hole that's really hard to get out of. Professional self-care, having boundaries and balance, right? Sometimes some flexibility is important too. And finally, spiritual, whether that is going to a house of worship, whether it's being in nature, whether it's journaling, meditating, it's a really open concept. So all of these pieces are elements of self-care. I would love for you all actually to put in the chat right now, because I do think it's important to focus on the positive. What's one of these types of self-care right now that you feel pretty good about? You know what? I am doing a good job with my physical self-care because I try and go for a walk 3 times a week, and that's good for me, right? That would be maybe what I put. So what do you all think you are doing a pretty good job at right now in terms of self-care? Which category? Great, thanks Candace and Clarabelle. Environmental, professional, environmental. Great, a huge range here. Physical, spiritual, psychological. That's okay, Vanessa. This is simply an exercise. If you had to pick one that you even think you're doing, you know, maybe a slightly better job at than the others, or which one you think you could start doing in a way that wouldn't be as taxing to try and begin doing. You could try that out, Vanessa. Excellent, great, a wide range. And I think this is a great reminder that everyone is different. We are all human beings, right? We all do have those hormonal boosts of cortisol in the morning, and our body starts to release melatonin at night. All right, that might be a constant. You know, many of us might have eyes that take in light, and then those send messages to the brain. Okay, those are some unifying factors. But on the more personal side, there might be some differences about what works best for us. So I encourage you to really find what works best for you in your particular life, environment, the demands that are being asked of you. And so what I would love for you to drop in the chat, because you all just, well, many of you at least, just listed one of the categories that you feel particularly good about right now. So what I would like to do, since we are coming to the end of the workshop, that I would like for you to put in the chat, what is one of the tips or recommendations that you would share to everyone else on this call? Given that there's one area that you felt pretty good about what you're doing, if you had to share an activity that works to boost that self-care, if you had to share a practice that you did that helps you stay grounded in that goal of improving self-care or keeping it consistent, drop that in the chat. Thank you, Mickey, for starting us off. Breathing exercises can be huge. And again, I love it because it is a small step. You don't need to spend any money. You don't need to take an extended amount of time to do it. You can do it anywhere. What else works? Awesome. I'll try and think of one as well. I'll give you all maybe another 15 seconds, 20 seconds to drop in the chat, and then I'll read some more out loud. These are awesome. Psychological, this is what I wrote. If I start getting frustrated with myself or a situation, I pause and try to think about the silver lining. There's got to be one. So that helps me psychologically stay a little more grounded and less, on a roller coaster of feeling really frustrated and then really relaxed, and I can stay more moderate. Understanding that things always work out in the end. Thank you. Choose a type of exercise that feels good in your body and for your mind. Great. Thank you, Cindy. I love how you kept that open because, again, exercise, it could be vacuuming. I don't know about you, but vacuuming definitely gets my temperature up a bit, gets my heart rate up. It could be gardening. It could be walking up and down stairs. It could be doing kickboxing. Therapy, great. Guided meditations, yoga, breath work, walking. Thanks, everybody. Great. Thanks, everybody. Great. Anyone who felt pretty good about their professional self-care, I would love to see a recommendation in the chat for that. If I had to think about something that I do professionally to keep myself on balance, on a more balanced track, I would say that if I receive an email that sparks some stress in me, maybe I feel like I'm being criticized or berated or misunderstood, I always remind myself, it's sort of like a reminder for myself that if I start feeling that stress, whoa, I need to put the brakes on. Because when you receive things in a text form, you are way more likely to misunderstand the tone. of what someone means. And so before acting on my interpretation, I always try and think about, okay, I just read this sentence and I put my own feelings onto it. And so me giving myself that space to step back and think, okay, what's another way that they could have delivered this message? What tone could they have been thinking when they wrote it that I just didn't understand when I read it? And that helps me stay more balanced and calm in my workspace and not have, as stressful or intensive interactions with my coworkers. Great, thanks Mickey for putting in the link to Chrome extensions that can serve as little reminders to yourself to, hey, it's time to get up and get a drink of water. 5-minute journal, thanks Cindy. Lindsay, thank you. Tell your workers that they do real good. Yes. Appreciations, telling someone they're doing a good job. It isn't hard to do. It's free, doesn't cost anything. And also it can be a great way to keep that good work coming, because sometimes people do things and they don't know that it's going well. So then they think, oh, if I'm not getting any compliments on this, any good feedback, that might mean that I'm doing something wrong. So then they change something that they actually were doing really well to begin with. Great, thanks everybody. All right, so I would love for you to now look at this questionnaire. And in addition to what you did on that matrix, right, of I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to start doing this, I will eventually get to doing this new thing, right? In addition to the goals you came up for that, I would love for you to pick one of these sentences that particularly resonates with you. And think about, why does it resonate with me? It could be because you think, yes, I definitely take time for myself every day. Or it could be, oh, wow, I really don't take time for myself every day. So I would love for you to pick one of these sentences and drop in the chat again, if you're comfortable, why it resonates with you. Because your initial reactions to something can often be signs of your subconscious, because you don't have to write an essay on this, right? You don't have to memorize each one of these. It's just a simple reaction that's information to you about how you're feeling and what you're interested in and focusing on in this moment. So even if your doctor says, oh, you need to be doing a lot of exercise, and that's something someone else is telling you to do, maybe for you, the priority, the thing that really stood out to you was, oh, wow, I need to take time and rest and take care of myself when I'm sick. So really think about which sentence really resonates for you in this moment right now. Maybe it's something you've been thinking a lot about. Maybe you surprise yourself with, oh, I didn't realize that movement, I'm missing movement right now. Or I'm doing movement, but I want to do more of it. Great. Thanks, everyone. And if you're looking for more kind of arrows in terms of, oh, where are some places that I would like to try going, right? These might be some ideas for you, some signposts. Just a reminder, it's different for everybody. And also it differs for each person at different points in their life. So maybe last year you were focused on one element of self-care, or that felt particularly important to you. And now you're realizing there's a different element that you would actually like to prioritize. All right. So it's time to open up calendars on your phone, on your computer. Maybe you just are writing it down, old school style, pen and paper. And in thinking about self-care as a whole, not just sleep, I'd love for you to answer these questions. And the reason I ask you to take your calendars out is because when you set that one small action step, I would like for you to put it in your calendar. It just gives you a little more oomph to want to get it done. So I'll give you all about 30 seconds, 45 seconds to answer these for yourself. And then I'll give you one last direction. All right. Again, this is really a jumping off point. And so the last thing I would love for you to drop in the chat is the name of the person you are going to tell. It could be, honestly, it doesn't even have to be a person. It could be your pet, it could be your goldfish, it could be the tree that you pass on the way to work every day. I would like for you to put in the chat just the first name, we don't need to know any other details, of a person you are going to tell, because studies have shown that we are much more likely to accomplish tasks when we have communicated to someone else our intention to do so. It sort of adds a little bit of, I would say, positive pressure, because you want to hold yourself accountable, not just to yourself, but to the other person as well. So it doesn't matter who, it doesn't have to be your boss. It could be your child who doesn't care whether or not at the end of the day you want to, take deep breaths every day at lunchtime. Anyone. Great. Cynthia, Sylvia, Frank, Cody and Christine, Amaryllis, Carol. Excellent. So in addition to adding something to your calendar, tell someone else what your plan is. Denise, thank you. Great. The last thing I want to share is just in terms of encouragement, because I've noticed, and I know for myself too, I can be hard on myself. And I wanted to share a story to close out that it blew my mind when I heard about this. And you can drop in the chat too. How many of you have heard that if you do something for 3 weeks straight, that's when it becomes an ingrained habit? 21 days, 3 weeks. Yeah, Taz just raised their hand. That's what you need. Yes, I'm seeing a couple yeses in the chat. Well, you know where that fact came from? It came from a plastic surgeon in the 1960s who wrote a book about his experiences with his patients who had received plastic surgery. And he's a legit doctor. He wrote an interesting book, but in his book, he talked about how his patients who maybe had a part of their body amputated, who had a nose job, that it would take on average 3 weeks for that person to recognize themselves in the mirror again after their corrective surgery. So that fact held true for those particular cases. But it took off and started being applied to everything: sleep habits, exercise habits, food habits, because I think it's because 3 weeks seems long enough that it's like, oh yeah, I'm really going to have to focus for 3 weeks, but also short enough that it seems doable. If I told you it took 3 years to ingrain a habit, everyone would say, well, I give up then, right? So I tell you this in closing. It's true for if you have corrective surgery and need to recognize yourself. And it takes about that amount of time to recognize yourself in the mirror, Taz. But in terms of changing lifestyle habits, there have been no studies done to prove that 3 weeks is the magic time period for that. So I tell you that not to be defeatist, but so that you can set realistic expectations for yourself, because this is a lifelong journey and we accomplish things in small bits. So Thank you so much for your participation in the chat. This was so lovely to speak with you all and hear your thoughts on this. And good luck on your ventures. Take care of yourselves.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nadia, for the information. If we can go into the chat right now, give some big love to Nadia. Thank you so much for the information. If you love this class, I'm going to drop into the chat here. This was just a primer of the larger class. The link is in the chat there. The next session that we're offering it is just in a couple of weeks. So you can click on that link, bring it out to your browser and go ahead and register for that. I do want to share some other information. We are coming up on the end of October pretty soon here. These are the other events that we had throughout the month of October. We have one more event coming up next week about talking about wellness in the workplace. I think, Nadia, you actually teed that up really well today of like, how do we actually have some of these conversations about wellness and well-being. Pretty soon, we're going to have our schedule out for all of our November activities. If you go into offsite, you're going to see some of that as well. Obviously, many of you got here because you're already offsite members, but I want to go ahead and put the link in the chat. Take that link, copy, paste it, share it, perhaps even with the person that Nadia said you're going to talk to, because our offsite community, again, is free for anybody to join. We have 7,300 people from across the world, all sorts of different industries, all sorts of different folks. So take that link and go ahead and put that out there to other people that you know and get them to be part of our offsite community. You can also scan that QR code that you see on the screen right now so that you can join that. It is also a place where we do demonstrations and pilots of some of our new classes. Every single month, Nadia and I and the rest of our teammates are teaching lots of new classes that we're developing based off of the feedback that you have shared with us. And so, again, offsite is a wonderful, wonderful community to be a part of. I do ask too, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to put into the chat here too, the evaluation for today's workshop. I know that I'm already going to tell Nadia all of the amazing things that she did and how wonderful this session was. I'd appreciate it if you take that link, take it, click it, take it out to your browser right now, because obviously when we close the session, that link is going to be gone. But if you can click on that link there, provide some comments back to Nadia, not just on her facilitation style, but also the content of the session. And if there's other topics that you want us at the Learnit team to come up with and develop, things that you feel like more people need to be hearing about and developing skills. I just want to say thank you. Again, there's so many comments coming in. Again, if everybody can give some love to Nadia in the chat and some thanks to Nadia. Want to thank everybody for being here. I think between our community here in Offsite as well as our YouTube community, we have over 60 people that have tuned into this session right now, which is really awesome. Obviously, that shows the importance of the topic of sleep and self-care. And I do hope that everybody does exactly what Nadia says. Go and talk to that person that you named. Share with them the commitment that you're making. I know that I am going to do that right after this. And again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Nadia, for being here. I wish everybody a wonderful rest of their Friday, depending on where you are in the world, the rest of your Friday morning, Friday afternoon, evening, Saturday, whatever it might be. And thank you so much. And we hope to see you at the next offsite event that we have. So thank you so much and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye. All right, I will go ahead and end the session.
Great. Thanks, Mickey. This was great.
Thanks, Nadia.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.